Hi everyone. I'm going to continue with our series on how to work on yourself while you're single. The point number 3 is working on your conflict resolution skills. Because that's important because that talks about how you communicate. And that's one of the biggest issues and the biggest problems in relationships. One of the biggest things that causes issues in relationships because the way you resolve conflict or choose to resolve conflict speaks a lot about your maturity. So you need to work on yourself while you're single and get to a place where you don't feel like you either have to always sweep things under the rug and not say anything, because that never works, because eventually it's going to come out and explode probably 6 months down the road. Or number two, you need to work on yourself if you feel that the best way to resolve conflict is to raise your voice, yell, scream, raise your voice. That never works as well. And the thing is, a lot of times, I know social media, TV, movies have all given us this impression that in relationships, people fight and they yell, and that's a good thing because it just shows that you guys are passionate about each other, and it's fine because then 3 days later, you guys can make up and it will be like the most beautiful, explosive thing ever. And that is a lie. I don't subscribe to that at all, because it is not necessary for you to fight with someone and yell and exchange words that you may or may not regret later. Because if you get yourself to a place like that, when you start fighting with someone, especially someone that you love, and you start fighting with someone in that way and on that level, number one, it shows how immature you are, and number two, it sows something spiritually into your relationship that you will see the fruits of it later. Like the moment when you're in such a place where you feel the two of you have to yell at each other, you're bound to say things that you're going to regret. There's just a negative spirit about involving yourself in such a situation when you're trying to resolve a conflict. So you need to get to a place where you are able to address differences without having to yell. And that is the most amazing thing that can happen in your relationship, because it allows you and it gives you room to be able to discuss things and understand each other from each other's point of view and perspective. Like a lot of times when people get into arguments and disagreements, no one is there to hear the other person's side. Everyone just wants their side to be heard. And that already creates a disaster. Then nothing's ever resolved. So while you're single, just look at how you resolve conflicts with your colleagues, with your family members, and see if you can get to a place where you can actually feel comfortable with walking away from from an argument or a disagreement without having to raise your voice, number one, and number two, without having to always feel like you're right, or without always having to feel like you need to put your point across, your point must be heard. Because when you're in that mindset, then you can never hear what the other person is saying. And these just sound like basics or simple things, but honestly, this is the basis of a successful relationship and a successful marriage. Because once you're in the marriage and you're in marriage for life, you are going to come across disagreements. You are going to come across things that both of you don't agree on. And you need to be mature enough to be able to say, no, but no, I'm too emotional about this. Let me just assess this for a minute. Let me let my emotions calm down. I know this person loves me. They would never say this, or they'll never do this out of well, they'll never do it on purpose. So there must be a reason why they've done A, B, C, and D. So let me have a conversation with this person so they can understand that when they did A, B, C, and D, it hurt my feelings. When you have a conversation like that, it just makes the world of a difference than if you then wait for that person to get home. I'm going to wait for him to get home. I can't believe that he did this. I cannot believe that he was talking to such and such, my cousin or whoever, and he knows that we don't get along. He knows that we have a very bad relationship, and he's going to go and talk to them. So I'm waiting for him to get home, and I'm going to have that conversation with him. And as soon as the poor guy walks in, you just offload and you just yell at the guy for talking to your cousin. And maybe he was just trying to build bridges. So it's important to always keep your emotions in check. I'm not saying by any means that you must never express yourself, but what I'm saying is that it is never, I don't see, I've never experienced a situation where you, in a relationship, you feel the need to have a full-on fight and raise your voice and call each other names and say things that you're going to regret later on. And I used to think that was strange until started talking to other couples, and we found a few other couples that they've never had those situations where they are fighting and they get to a point where there's slamming of doors, someone walks out, someone sleeps out somewhere, someone sleeps on the couch. They've never had that. And that helped me to realize more and more that social media and just the general public likes to make us think that that is the way to handle relationships, and it is not. And if you have that mindset, you're setting yourself up for disappointment in your marriage, because you are not marrying a Messiah. You're never going to marry Jesus. You're marrying a human being. And as long as you're going to marry a human being, then both of you are going to do things that are going to upset each other. And how you handle those disagreements is going to be very key to how you move on in your relationship. And those things will also infiltrate into the rest of your family when you have children and things like that, because it'll go into how you discipline your children, and it'll also go into how your kids view you. I mean, I don't understand how people are comfortable with their children seeing them yell at each other and fighting and slamming doors. That a child should never be exposed to that, because by a child seeing that, you've already planted a seed in them, and you will see the fruits of that very seed. It may come back and bite you. It may, be seen elsewhere when they interact with other kids or interact with other adults, but you will see the fruit of exposing your children to, that kind of thing. So it's very important for you to assess yourself while you're working on yourself and working on being single, to assess your conflict resolution skills. Are you the kind of person that is passive and you just like to sweep things under the rug, which is not good because it's going to come out eventually? Or are you the type of person that feels you need to have a full-on fight because they must know exactly how you feel and you must let them know, and no one's going to walk all over you? Both extremes are not good, and you can't take that into a relationship with you. So you have to get to a place where you are so secure with yourself that you're able to address an issue and still be able to stay level-headed and be able to understand the other person's perspective and be able to admit when you're wrong, because that's also very important and also very key to having a successful marriage and having successful problem resolution skills. So that's all I have to share for today, for working on yourself while you're single.